Joining me now, former CIA analyst and host of the Buck Sexton Show. Buck Sexton is here. Welcome back, Buck.
Hey, Kennedy.
So let's go beneath the surface a little bit because, you know, there is so much room for speculation and conspiracy theory when you've got the kind of gaps that we've got in this story. But what's really going on beneath the surface that strikes you?
Well, first off, I think everybody should understand that the Turkish security services are very competent and certainly have a lot of information about what went on here. And while it's a no-no to have things going on inside a consulate of a foreign nation that's on your soil, there's certainly a lot of stuff that tends to happen outside, around, and maybe sometimes inside, too. So there's a very real possibility the Turks do have a lot of the information here that they've been suggesting and leaking about up to this point, and leaking, I think, really to influence the conversation in this country more than anywhere else. The Saudis have a pretty clear play here. I mean, they're going to say that this was a rogue operation that was absolutely not brought to the attention of Mohammed bin Salman. And while we may not believe them, that perhaps slightly implausible deniability, but deniability nonetheless, will be enough for them to, as you said, hope that business will go back to as usual in just a pretty short matter of time here. In terms of the investigation, Kennedy, though, we don't have any actual evidence yet. We have news reports. There are certainly tapes, and there may even be this audio they're talking about of what happened, meaning that he went into this consulate. There are people coming and going, and there's been a lot of reporting about this. But what happened inside is what we really want to know. And then also,
does someone know that, though? So who has had, we've had a lot of really graphic, disgusting descriptions of how this journalist was allegedly murdered. But who has actually heard or seen this evidence?
It's tough to say.
Do you think Pompeo has laid eyeballs and earballs on it?
So far, I know the administration said that they haven't gotten to or seen all of this. I think that part of that is that they would want to have people in place to verify it. And quite honestly, if you're talking about someone like Pompeo hearing it, they weren't speaking in English in there. So, you know, you're going to need some processes, some analytic processes, the sorts of things that I used to do, to verify that the information is what it's been presented as, that it hasn't been doctored in any way. Because obviously the stakes here, Kennedy, are very, very high. And as you mentioned, there are international players here who, one, have a lot of interest as well, but also they lie all the time. I mean, these are governments that are repressive. These are semi-authoritarian. Well, in the case of Saudi Arabia, straight up authoritarian.
And I don't buy the line that Turkey certainly is a moderate ally, considering the direction that Erdogan has been going the last few years, concentrating powers, assassinating political enemies of his own. So I have a hard time with only Turkey giving us their side of the story and extracting certain bits of information to sell to the United States, because obviously they are gaming the system. They are trying to get something out of it. What's unique here is the Secretary of State was also CIA director. How does that influence how he deals with this situation in particular?
He knows how the dark side game is played. He understands what really happens when it comes to the kind of intrigue and collection operations that will be in and around any diplomatic facility, perhaps anywhere in the world, that there are going to be players involved here that Pompeo is interacting with on a diplomatic level, but he also understands who the key intelligence players are in a way that I think nobody else in this situation really would be able to. So he brings that to bear. I have to say that the media in this country is making this very much an issue of morality and the need for America to take a strong stand. But I can't help but notice that one of the dominant narratives that you hear, really it's a two-part narrative, is that this is because Trump cozies up to dictators, and this is because Trump says mean things about journalists. This is crazy, Kennedy. Journalists have been murdered, kidnapped, bad things have happened long before Trump came to office. Turkey and Saudi Arabia are countries that are notoriously bad on that front, and there have been a lot of strongmen doing very bad things, including in places like Syria during the Obama years. But you can hear these narratives. It's Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault.
There were people doing bad things in Saudi Arabia and Turkey during the Obama years.
Yes.
So, you know, obviously there's some bad blood over the Muslim Brotherhood and the Arab Spring, with Turkey and Saudi Arabia taking sides. Turkey was very amenable. Saudi Arabia very much opposed to that amenability. So is this just a grudge match, and they're both trying to curry favor with the United States for economic and political gain?
Yeah, they're absolutely. I think it's also about who is going to be the leader in the Sunni Muslim world, right? Obviously, the Turks aren't Arabs, but in the Sunni Muslim world, you have Turkey, very large, powerful country, big military for the region, and Saudi Arabia, which because of our arms sales mostly, has also become a regional military power. And because of what happened to Egypt after the Arab Spring, we rely on Saudi as a counterbalance to Iranian ambitions in the region, which are very aggressive. I mean, it happens in Shia militias in Iraq. It happens with Hezbollah in Lebanon. It happens in Yemen with the Houthi rebels. So, you know, we need somebody that we can rely on in the region to box in Iranian ambitions. And where Turkey wants to play in this game still remains to be seen. But so far, they've been very unhelpful and very Islamist. By the way, Khashoggi also was somebody who had a favorable view of Islamism, not jihadism per se, but Islamism, and had very deep ties to the royal family in Saudi Arabia. So this could really be a personal...
Saud, he doesn't like the crown prince, and the crown prince doesn't like being criticized. So obviously we don't have the entire story. I mean, I differ with the president, and I don't automatically offer either of these countries or any of the actors the benefit of the doubt because, frankly, they haven't earned it. And I'm still much more offended by the Saudi hijackers murdering 3,000 Americans on 9/11. Haven't forgotten about that one yet, Buck.
Yeah, and if we didn't sever relations with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia over that one, trust me, we're not going to over this one. I think people who are expecting a major moment of moral clarity are going to be a little disappointed.
Not disappointed with your appearance here. Thank you so much, Buck Sexton.
Always good to see you, Kennedy.
You too, thanks.